good, I can move around now. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm Sean Tuttle, and I'm presenting on behalf of Dr. Naomi Mazes, who is the actual point of contact for Australia, who also couldn't be here today. Yes, so I'll give you a brief overview of activities in Australia at the moment and where they're heading. I'd like to start by saying that Australia is probably about the most frustrating country to be in if you have any interest in space. Also, as you will have heard from one of the other gentlemen here this morning, it also is not a shining example of how to collaborate in space. However, the good news that I can report today is that is all drastically changing, and between Naomi and myself we're starting to collaborate within Canberra in a meaningful way, and hopefully this will spread around the country more, and you will see that there are actually some quite interesting activities starting to get underway. Now, this is the part. Naomi comes from the Australian National University, and she's responsible for the Advanced Instrumentation Technology Centre, which is this large test centre which you can see in that picture and here, which is being developed as a sort of national resource containing some very high quality thermal vacuum testing, vibration testing, clean room facilities, and EMC testing, climatic chambers, and so on. And this is largely driven by participation in a large ground-based telescope project. That was the way to get the funding, but it's also now available as a space asset for any future space activities. And this is, as I said, is in Canberra. So I'm also in Canberra, across the other side of town, at the other university, University of New South Wales. And as you can see, quite comprehensive capabilities exist. There, a lot of them are now basically fully up and running and available for use. Some are still in development, the larger shaker table, for example. The ANU and the AITC within ANU is also responsible for a number of other activities. So they're starting to offer various courses and training. So within the CubeSat environment, they've started offering testing and AIT courses. Some of those we'll be doing jointly with them. There's also optical training which they're introducing, and that's because they have a very strong heritage in astronomy within the university. I believe they're looking at space short courses, and a lot of this will be based around the technology centre there and the facilities that they can use. And then they're exploring various opportunities for students via PhDs or internships, participation in the APRSAF and the KIBO ABC initiative, the UNISEC Mission Idea Contest. I think they might be looking at that in the future, and an astronomy program where they, I think more is said on the next slide, later on though. So we now get to the other side of town, UNSW Canberra, and the presentation is a bit Canberra centric because that's where we both come from, but I will cover the rest of the country shortly. So we were lucky enough to convince the powers that be within the main campus of the university in Sydney that they should invest some proper money in helping us start off space activities. So the number you see there, the 10 million that's being invested over the next 5 or 6 years, that will give us enough to employ people so that we have some professional staff to support the CubeSat programs. We are building up comprehensive test facilities. Now, this is not the classic Australian case of competing with the neighbours. We're developing a low-cost testing capability so that you can try out your ideas and make mistakes and so on in a very inexpensive way. It can be completely hands-on for students, and once, say, a mission is quite well developed and requires some proper testing, then you can move across town and use the facilities at the AITC. So we've got this staggered program of CubeSat missions planned for the next 5 years, largely aimed at improving the orbit predicting capability via improving our knowledge of the upper atmosphere and what's in it and how it interacts with spacecraft. But in parallel, we're also looking at new mission ideas and developing technologies for spacecraft and spacecraft in general. Anything that is useful to do in space, whether it be for science or for an application on Earth, those are the sorts of things that we're focusing on. So you can see some of the facilities there. Me putting a pretend satellite in the vacuum chamber, the ground station and the main lab up above, which is underway in its development. So that's all the R&D and so on. Education is another important thing. One of the things that I personally think is really good is what the UNISEC does. So I've been coming, this is my third visit to a UNISEC meeting, and we started off by participating in the MIC 3 and were lucky enough to get second place last year, and we're having another go this year in the pre-MIC 4, and we have Courtney representing the team today. So I think this is a good way to get involved and find meaningful things to do and collaborations. In addition, I've got a number of projects running with some large European space companies, so and those are technology development type things. Another colleague is very active in the orbiting things in, so observing things in orbit from the ground, and he has a optical telescope which is linked up now with 20 others around the world, which is going to form part of an ever more capable debris and general space object tracking network. And this will complement what's also going to start happening in the orbit prediction area, where there are already 2 PhD students working. So I've mentioned the UNISEC. The other thing is the master's programs that we offer, and research via PhDs. And you can see some of the topics that are currently being looked at by our students. The first and all 6 of them are now up and running. So those are the types of projects that we're looking at, and this is only going to explore, and of course we're looking to attract the best students from wherever we can find to come and join us. In Australia, there are a number of other universities involved in CubeSat programs. We don't have a good overview of what they're doing, but several are involved with the QB50 program and will be testing their satellites at various times in the AITC in Canberra. The Defence Science and Technology Organisation is working with us to help our first 2 missions, and from there on we will carry on by ourselves. The AITC people are also involved with some of the people from here in trying to standardize some of the testing that's done in the CubeSat community, so that's an important undertaking. And there is currently a CRC, or Cooperative Research Centre, which now is headquartered at the ANU, at the AITC, which involves quite a few partners, and this is also looking again at space environment knowledge and management, so tracking. There have been some student on the ground and in balloon activities. A number of small companies are starting to emerge, startup companies. You saw a resource provider this afternoon, and I think it's nice to be able to say that Australian space, things are finally moving from the ground actually into space, and that will happen over the next 5 years in earnest. And we were very grateful to receive the go-ahead to host the Nanosatellites conference in 2018.